I first started homeschooling, I kind of thought if I could just find the perfect curriculum, then, everything would be perfect and great, and my kids would homeschool awesome. And so I was always looking for the perfect curriculum. Now, we have the perfect curriculum here for you guys. You ready? This is what everybody wants to know. Whatever works for your family. There is not one perfect curriculum out there. So I want to get into your mind. We're trying to talk about true education here too. We're all Christians here, and we don't want just to focus just on academics like the world focuses. We want to focus on that true education. We want to have our children be well-rounded people who have a strong relationship with God, who are of service to others, who know how to run a household, do their finances, cook healthy meals, as well as academics. So this is where we're coming from. So I want to encourage you guys that you guys can do this. I know, Brenda, you've been kind of nervous about this, but you can absolutely do this. I want to encourage you guys too, not to focus so much on curriculum, because there are so many good curriculums out there, and they all kind of cover the same thing. I want you to think more about, kind of the big picture, what you're really trying to teach your kids this year, whether it be, character or being more self-sufficient or whatever it is. Now, another really good encouraging thing for you guys, you won't screw up your child. I know as a homeschool parent, the hardest person on homeschooling parents is yourself. You tend to be so worried. Am I screwing up my kids? Am I teaching them what they need to know? Are they going to be okay? Are they going to be failures in life? And I know that because I go through the same thing quite a bit. So I just want to encourage you guys, you won't screw up your child. You actually have a great opportunity to have a really great years, to grow closer to your kids, to have a really strongly knit family, and to be able to give them a really great dose of spirituality and teaching them how to have a really close walk with God. So some of the reasons why you won't screw up your child, I want to remind you guys there will always be academic gaps. We have this idea that just because we send our kids to school, that they will know everything and they will be okay. But whether you're homeschool or you're going to a public school or a Christian school or wherever it is, you're not going to be able to know it all. I mean, that's just not possible. We have so much information out there. And really, we're not here to teach them just information. We want them to be thinkers, right? Mm-hmm. Because the information, you can go out there and you can find it, right? We have Google, we have all sorts of books. It's easy to find the information. So don't be so worried that, oh no, I'm going to miss something that my child is not going to learn and they're going to be screwed up forever. No, that's okay. If they don't learn it now, this is their next point, they'll learn it next year. If you haven't noticed yet, all the learning is very cyclical. You hit something and then you will hit it again at some point and then again and again. So if they miss it this year, that's okay. They'll hit it next year or the year after. So don't stress too much about that. And kids can catch up very quickly. We don't give kids enough credit. In school, we have, the teacher has to teach to all these kids. And so often she has to hold back the ones that are going too fast and kind of drag along the ones that are really slow, and she has to go at a certain pace. But the beauty about homeschooling, you can have your kids go as fast as they want to in certain subjects, and if they need a little help, you can take the time to be able to catch them up to that. And for example, high school, a lot of people worry about high school. You can do all the high school in 2 years.
All the academics.
All the academics in 2 years if you needed to. Part of the reason why the kids are in school for 8 hours is because there are so many children that the teacher is trying to teach them to. You don't need to sit your children down for 8 hours to teach them.
And we'll talk more about, kind of good evidence in regards to how much time your children really need based on their maturity and their age range a little bit later in the presentation. The idea of kids catching up quickly, I think, is just, it takes a lot of stress off of you to not feel that if by the start of the next school year, suddenly we're back to normal and your kids are going to go back to school, that somehow they're going to end up in school and everybody's going to go, oh, look at those dumb homeschoolers. Oh my goodness, what were they doing all that year? They haven't done anything. And that your kids will then forever be behind and never be able to close that gap. It's actually completely untrue. We'll talk about this a little bit more later when we talk about the evidence looking at ages to start reading or to start teaching your children intentionally to try reading. And large amounts of data show from the neuroscience standpoint and from the anecdotal evidence that kids who start reading later, even as late as 10, 11, or 12 years old in some cases, which just sounds crazy to most of us, catch up very rapidly once they start reading and tend to end up surpassing in ability other kids who start trying to learn to read at 3, 4, 5 years of age. So don't worry about trying to keep measuring and keep tabs on every single progress as to how it's going to compare to the other kids who are doing real school, because your child's ability to catch up is going to be, number one, already somewhat natural. Once they're exposed to information, they can do it. But on top of that, if you're focusing your year, this time that you have at home, to teach them how to learn and why to learn and how to be self-motivated learners, their ability to catch up and learn stuff is going to be way past those who are just kind of used to having it fed to them. So another thing that we want to encourage you guys, and this has been one that's been, a constant learning opportunity for Marie-Lys and I, is that when you start looking at homeschooling as not just what are we teaching in the academics, but what are we teaching them about how to learn and how to have relationships and how to have a spiritual relationship with God too, that you start to realize then that even when things don't go right, like your plans fall apart, you paid a bunch of money for this particular curriculum, or you had this particular schedule set up, and then it all falls to pieces because something is not working right or life changes, that it's okay. These are actually opportunities when these unexpected things happen for you to model to your children, hey, here's how we deal with the unexpected. Here's how I'm going to react to a mistake that I have made when I have, I've been too rough on you about this. I've pushed you too hard on this. I chose the wrong plan for our schedule. I'm going to show you now how we assess the problem, learn from it, make some changes, and move forward. And what you're really doing then is you get an opportunity here in homeschool that kids really don't get to see from adults in regular school, and that is how to have a growth mindset approach. And if you're not familiar with that concept, we will talk a little bit about that more later on in the presentation. But I think this is one of the couple key things, is not only that you're not going to screw up your child, but that even when you do mess up, that is actually an opportunity for your child to learn from what you do in reaction to that mistake or that messing up. And part of the reason it's not too big of a deal either is that kids do adapt quickly. We tend to be very hard on ourselves. Our kids are typically not going to be as hard on us as we are on ourselves. First of all, they often don't realize the standard that we're holding ourselves to and our expectations for them. And then kids are plastic, especially before they hit teenage years, they are able to roll with the punches. And so even if you have big glitches during this upcoming school year and you do homeschooling and you realize, wow, I don't remember a single thing about math at all. Oh my goodness, I've got to do something different now because I'm completely klutzy at explaining this. Your kids will adapt, and they're going to actually find from it often, those are going to be the moments that they really learn something applicable for the rest of their life, because most of the time, what you're learning in math class is not something you really have to be a master of later on once you get done with actual school. But how to learn from a mistake, how to admit you made a mistake, how to not get down on yourself when you made a mistake, those are valuable lessons that our kids need to know.
So again, don't be too hard on yourself. You can do this. And remember that whatever schedule you come up with, whatever curriculum you come up with, those are not your master. We have a schedule that we kind of follow probably about 70% of the time, and we'll show you that in a little bit. But, again, you have a great opportunity. If you're having a great conversation with your child about a relationship with God or about something that's going on, whatever it is, don't be afraid to just run with it. And instead of saying, well, we got to finish your math today, we got to finish your English. I mean, this is the beauty of homeschooling. You can take the time to have those deep conversations that your kids will remember much later and internalize, rather than this one math problem that, she didn't do that particular day. So those are now the curriculum. Take the time. Homeschooling can be just a beautiful thing. take the time to really connect with your kids.
So it's very important to set your goals, not just, why am I homeschooling? Oh, well, because coronavirus. I mean, okay, yes, everything 2020 is because coronavirus. But but what are your short-term goals for your children? And what are your long-term goals for your children? Because homeschooling, by the fact that it is so tailor-made to each child's personality, to the time of day they learn best, to the ways that they learn best, you have an opportunity to make an impact in homeschooling, even if it's just for 1 year. You have or a quarter. You have an opportunity to make a difference on their ability to learn forever. And you have the ability, you also have the opportunity at the same time to make a difference in how they will interact with you forever. Because now you will get to interact with them in a way that's different than just the typical parent-child relationship. And there's a lot of learning that has to happen there. There's some rough edges that always have to be smoothed off as a new type of relationship evolves between the two of you, between you and each of your kids. But the long-term effects can be amazing if, again, you go into it with this mindset that, hey, we're going to get more out of this than just simply getting a high score on your history exam when you go back to school. And we also want to point out, and this is kind of a duh, but that bottom line there, that this is not a normal year for anybody. It's not a normal homeschool year for anybody either. Even for those of us who've been homeschooling already now for years, 2020, and really, once we hit, the last part of last school year, normal homeschooling went out the window. So what this means is that, in a way, for you guys, the standards are even lower for homeschooling this year. Don't feel that you're going to need to have some kind of perfectly designed plan with schedules and all the different opportunities that real homeschool can do, because a lot of those opportunities don't exist right now. Real homeschool involves also partnering up with other homeschool families, doing field trips, having co-ops, having opportunities to do, things in the museums and in the libraries, go out and do service projects. And so much of that has been curtailed by this crap that is 2020. So don't then feel that even if you go into this homeschooling and you find that there's some challenges and that it doesn't quite seem that it's clicking as well as you were hoping it would, keep that asterisk next to this year. Remember, this is not a normal year. And what your kids are going through is not normal. What's being expected of them is not normal. And so what's expected of you is not normal either. And you've got a lot of room to quote unquote fail, because part of this is just getting through it, just surviving. And yet, I think the other really cool thing is that then this is an opportunity for so many parents to experiment with homeschooling that haven't before, that have been curious about it before, and you can start to dip your toes in. And if you do find you're enjoying it, well, guess what? Once coronavirus finally becomes something that we have under manageable control, homeschooling will be that much more fun as well.
It gets better.
It will get better. That's right. And this is the mantra we've had to have all year. This all gets better.
Just one more thing about your goals. I really encourage you to actually sit down and write your goals out. Your long-term goals and your short-term goals. Yes, academics, but think beyond just academics. Again, we're trying to do a true whole person education here. And when things go wrong during your homeschooling year, and things will go wrong. Your kid will not feel like studying, you will have a bad night, whatever it is, things will go wrong. You can go back to those goals and remind what really are my long-term goals? Just because I had a bad day or a bad week or a bad month doesn't mean that everything is out the window. Remind yourself of your goals and keep going.
And make readjustments within those goals. Your focus then, it doesn't have to be that moment-to-moment battle with one child who really hates doing this particular subject or doesn't like this particular book, but rather, okay, well, what's the big picture goal? Maybe I need to take this thing that's become a conflict between us and just set it aside for a while and focus on the goals, the real goals.
Yeah, and if a curriculum doesn't work, don't be afraid to throw it out the window. Just because you spend $100 on a book, if it's not working, don't suffer through it. Don't make your child suffer through it. Try something else. That's why there's so many curriculums out there, because there's so many different personalities and different levels, and your personality of teaching also comes into play with this.
And both your personality and your child's will probably mutate or evolve as you get into homeschooling. And you'll find that things that might have worked initially for them don't work anymore. You need to make changes, and that's okay.
Bye.